Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another in-depth tournament report. All 5 of my games from this weekend's 4-Foot Snake GT. So it's been quite a while since I've done a Kings of War tournament report. The last tournament I did for Kings of War was about August, I think. So it's way overdue. There was a Dead Zone tournament I did in October, I think, but not too many in the latter half of last year. So we're going to be picking things up now with this one. This was a 2-day event, 5 games. And rather than it being the usual 2,000 points, this was 1,995 points, which is a little bit unusual. You don't see that very often, but it is to try and prevent some of the spammier lists out there, because anything below 2,000 points, you are limited in that you can only take 2 of certain things. For example, heroes and war machines and such. So this is put on by the good people involved in the 4-Foot Snake podcast, one of whom I believe is in the chat right now. Anyone who's watching this live, by the way, feel free to drop some comments in there and I'll refer to them occasionally. If you want to ask anything, if you want to get any insight on my tactical brilliance that maybe I don't make abundantly clear in my analysis, then feel free. Also, any comments on any of the armies that you can see in the pictures coming up soon, or just any other general comments. This was at Element Games, the Northwest Gaming Centre, which is quite a lovely facility now, especially compared to how it used to be, when I heard some describe it previously as a den of filth. That's not how I would have described it. The words I would have used would be slightly different, but I'm not sure this is the time nor the place to go into them. The only one criticism I have with the venue is the hand dryer in the toilets is incredibly feeble. If you want dry hands, you would have to stand with your hands under them for about, probably I would estimate, 17.5 minutes. So whether no one notices because the average wargamer just doesn't wash their hands after using the toilet, I don't know. Or maybe it's because people actually want their hands to still be wet so that when they open the door again with the handle, they've got a bit of moisture left to get rid of the dreaded door handle germs. Maybe I'm reading too much into that. But anyway, perhaps we should talk about my army and the tournament now. So in addition to those 1,995 points, each player was given the option of taking a living legend, characters that were based on the various hosts of the 4-Foot Snake podcast. And I'll come to those as and when they come up in the games. I think I only actually encountered a small number of them. Some of them were more popular than others. Some of the rules seemed more straightforward, or perhaps just better in some people's opinions. So some of them were more popular, and I didn't get to play against one of each. So I'll go through them as they come up, and of course I'll describe the one that I took as well. So let's have a look at a still image from Game 1 here. Everyone, let me know if you can see all these pictures clearly and that you can hear me all right, by the way. Any issues you've got going on, drop them into the comments. So far, we've got Paulos01, Newbie, Wraith13, and Paul on the 4-Foot Snake account. So if I've got any scathing criticisms of the way the tournament was run, then I'll know where to drop those particular complaints. Okay, so Game 1. Nice snow-themed table is always nice for my Goblin army. So before we go into the scenario and the opposition here, I'm going to go through my list, starting with what you can see in this shot here. So I've got plenty of paper in front of me, including my army list, which is a several-page document having about 19, maybe 18 or 19 drops, I think it is, and a couple of pages of special rules as well. This is, I think, the first tournament maybe in the world to use the Clash of Kings 2018 book. So there were some changes, and a lot of people probably had to rewrite their lists at the last minute as certain items disappeared or were changed dramatically. Certain units were modified as well. If you want to know more about that book, you can check out my review on it from a few days ago. Now then, my list. So on this screen here, you can see that we've got the guy with the gong there. Now, normally that would be a Flaggit. However, on the hobby scoring for this tournament, which is quite a big issue, hobby and sportsmanship were going towards the overall scores. So I wanted to get maximum painting score that I could. So I took this gong dude as a wizard because I didn't have a Flaggit on foot in my list. And I wanted to put this guy in because he actually has a freehand bloody smiley face on his gong. And yes, this picture is very blue. For some reason, this corner of the hall was extremely blue at this time in the morning. I don't know why that is, but the first few pictures appear quite blue. But they do go back to normal at some point. So he is a wizard there, and he's got Scarletmaw's Fenulian Amulet. And that gives him Lightning Bolt 5 instead of 3. So that's all he has. He's just going to stand around lightning bolting people. We've got some Mawbeasts here, a regiment of Mawbeasts. Next to them, we've got a horde of Rabble. Now, even though they do have spears, I think everyone out there and their dog has a Goblin unit with spears that they're now running as Rabble. Because people don't think that Phalanx, as a special rule, stacks up compared to the saving you make in cost on the Rabble unit. So everyone seems to be going for Rabble now. I'm no different. Rabble Horde. Then we have the first of 3 Troll Hordes, and they are all equipped differently. This one, I believe, you can see that the guy at the front has chopped his hand off. You'll get better angles on some of these later, but that unit has the Chalice of Wrath, which is a new item that gives the unit Fury. And if you're not familiar with that rule, then the Giants have it as well. I don't have any Giants in this list, but that's where I'm most familiar with the rule. And it means that when you're wavered, you can still countercharge. And as you know, I'm a big fan of mitigating the effects of waver on trolls because they have such a big gap between the waver and the route values. So that's on there. We've got 2 War Trombones down here. That's the maximum that were available to me in this tournament, with it being below 2,000 points. Apparently there was something to do with the Clash of Kings 2018 rule set were already in use at another tournament first. So maybe this is the UK first. And then down here we have, now you may notice that there are 3 war machines here, all being used as rock lobbers. How is that possible when there's a rule of 2, I hear you ask? Well, in the new Clash of Kings book, there is actually the Mega Lobber. I can give you the exact name of it here. Grogger's Great Lobber, which is more expensive than a regular rock thrower, but it also has a couple of bonuses. It has an extra hit. It's blast d6 plus 3 instead of 2, and it's also elite. So that one there, the big actual rock lobber, is Grogger's Great Lobber, and the other 2 are just regular big rock throwers, even though that one looks like a sharp stick thrower. But you get the idea. So that was a way to get around the rule of 2 there and still take 3 rock lobbers in the list, which I'm very fond of. Now, moving along, I believe, yeah, here we are. So, right here we have my Living Legend character represented by Harambe, and that is Little Paul. So, this particular character, this was the most popular one by far on the day that people took. And to give you some idea of the rules, it's large infantry, only speed 4, but it's, when you hear about the rules, it's mainly a support kind of character, because there's Rallying 2, which is quite a big deal for boosting nearby units, and Very Inspiring, which limits how many inspiring characters I needed to take in the army. So I liked the sound of that. And also, it's pretty good at fighting as well. Defense 5, Nerve 14, 16. Only has 3 attacks, but Blast D3 on each one, and Crushing Strength 4. So when it does fight, it's going to kill stuff, but because of the slow speed, it's mainly going to be in a supporting role, kind of boost the nearby units. And you'll notice when I go through the entire list that I only took 2 other inspiring characters because I was so confident in Little Paul's ability to be very inspiring. So there's a Troll Bruiser right there, which is one of them. Of course, he's only inspiring trolls, but there are 3 hordes of those in this game, or in this tournament, should I say. There's a Mincer right there. We have a troop of Mawbeasts, smaller unit there. We have the second wizard. This one's on a Fleabag, and this one has the Circlet of Blood, which is the new item that seems to have been brought in to prevent Blood Boil from being spammed left, right, and center. You can now only take it on 1 unit because it's an item rather than an upgrade spell. So he's got Blood Boil. So I'm hoping that all my shooting will whittle down units, and then he'll just swan in there and finish off the units by throwing a billion dice at them because they've already taken so much damage. We have the second Troll Horde here, with the dead elf on the base, which I always use to represent Dwarven Ale. I just like to think that elven blood is somehow used in the production of Dwarven Ale. It seems fitting. those two races are not exactly the biggest fans of each other traditionally in most fantasy settings. Then we have a horde of spitters. They don't have any particular upgrade, and starting them off in woods, any kind of shooter unit starting in woods, it's generally just to give them a bit more protection when the enemy eventually reaches them and decides to attack them. Maybe they'll hold on for a bit longer, because they're not the easiest to take down, a horde of lowly spitters like that, because they do have pretty decent nerve, so you can't just throw chaff at them and expect to kill them in one go. Then we have a Flaggit down here on a Fleabag with the Holy Hand Grenades, which I like because it's not been hit by all the changes to, for example, breath attacks that are affected by cover and such now. The Holy Hand Grenade still hits on a 4+ regardless of anything. No factors can change the way that hits, so very much like the Holy Hand Grenade. Then we have another Troll Horde. This one has no upgrades on it at all. And over on this side, we've got a regiment of Fleabag Sniffs, the shooty versions of Fleabags. So that is my entire list. And we can put that document to one side here. And now, scenario 1 in round 1 is invade. So, of course, the aim there is to get into the opposition's half of the table at the end, have units entirely within the opponent's half and stop them getting into your half. And it's on unit strength. Everything seems to be on unit strength nowadays, so I think I have pretty decent strength in this army. If we go back and have a look at my battle line here, you can see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hordes, which are very, very high scoring. I've got a couple of regiments, the Mawbeast and the Fleabags over on the other side, and a troop. And then scoring for unit strength, we also have the Mincer, the Bruiser, and my Living Legend character. So, as far as kill points for this tournament, the Living Legends are all worth 150 points to be killed. And the way the scoring works, there's no point holding on to your units, because you're only scoring based on how much you kill rather than the difference between the two kill piles, as it were. So if there's a total bloodbath, both players will be picking up lots of points, so it encourages lots of brutal slaughter. So let's go on to the opposition for this first round. Now you can see immediately that there seems to be some kind of alcoholic beverage there, but it was far too early in the day for anyone to be truly inebriated, so I don't think that's going to give me any particular advantage. Maybe by later in the day. That's a good question, actually. When is the best time to face someone who's been drinking alcohol at a tournament? Is it the first game in day 2, perhaps, when they're feeling the effects of the night before? I'd say it possibly is. End of day 1's interesting because it's going to be after lunch, so any morning alcohol may have been absorbed in the food that they had for lunch. So it's an interesting debate. Anyone got any thoughts on that? Drop them in the chat. And hello to Green Stuff Games in the chat as well. Now, the enemy. It's the Herd. Now, it's an army that I've had mixed success against, shall we say, in the past. I've run into trouble, not necessarily with my goblins, but I typically don't like coming up against stampedes, but they have taken a bit of a hit, actually, in the Clash of Kings book. So we'll see if there are any of those in this list. Up here we have some centaurs with bows. We have, and if I can't remember all the exact names of these units, it's because I don't have a copy of this list handy, but I believe they're Guardian Brutes, something along those lines. Then down here, oops, wrong way. Then we have my opponent's version of Little Paul. So we're both using the same Living Legend here. Then we have more Guardian Brutes. The Guardian Brute Hero, whatever his name is. We've got a Shaman there. We've got 2 Beast Packs. We've got a Lycan Alpha, a Stampede, which is a lot of bears. And down here we've got some Lycans, 2 units of Lycans, one bigger than the other, of course, and I think that's another Shaman. So there's a lot of speed in here. However, I'm not too terrified because I am well known for rolling 5+ with my Rock Lobbers in the first couple of turns. So I'm thinking I can take out a couple of the dangerous, faster units. And a unit like this, for instance, just a small unit of Lycans, I'm not too worried about because there's not much of mine that they'll be able to hit in one go and take out. So if I can take down for example, these lichens here and the herd, and the stampede, should I say, then I'm not too concerned about all this lot over on this side, because all this is much slower. The central force is not very fast at all compared to this flank. So this is where I'm going to try to focus all my firepower. And actually, there's another interesting point. This entire tournament, the way the terrain was laid out, it was left up to the players to roll off to see who puts the first piece down and then place the terrain themselves on a series of pre-arranged dots on the tables. So there were certain spots that you could put the terrain in, but you could choose which terrain piece to put there. So when I had the opportunity, I was putting the height 4 impassable terrain really close to the edge, so the enemy couldn't use it to hide from my rock lobbers. And of course, the enemy would like to have things like woods right in the middle of the table, taking up a huge amount of space, blocking the view of my war machines. So it had an interesting tactical element, and I approve of that, actually. Also, there's 1 hour per player for these games, rather than the usual 50 minutes that we're used to. So, with it being invade, I'm somewhat concerned about the speed of the opposing army, since a lot of the fighting may take place in my half. But like I said, I think I can take out some of the big threats, and the rest of the army isn't quite as fast. So, turn 1. And, well, it looks like I got the first turn. So I have moved up here. The Flaggit has positioned itself between these 2 units because all the enemy shooting is in that corner, I think. It's pretty much only the centaurs with bows and maybe some spells. Not much, though. So I've positioned him there just to inspire both those units, because I don't have much inspiring, and a lot of it's in the centre. And then the rest has just moved up. I've put the Rabble Horde behind that wall, intentionally in charge range of a couple of units, because if I can draw them in to charge there, I then got the possibility for flank charges with trolls and Mawbeasts. And if they punch through and go beyond that point, then I've always got the war trombones in support here. And I've got lightning bolt from the wizard over there. So let's see how that plan goes. But I'm hoping to draw something out. Then the rock lobbers. 2 of them managed to hit in turn 1, which is illustrated nicely here by a picture of 2 of them. And what's that? Oh, I've killed the stampede by rolling 11 on the nerve check. Wow. So that is a really good result there. They did do a fair bit of damage, the 2 rock lobber direct hits, but I did get a nice juicy number on the nerve test as well. So they are just dead instantly. The biggest threat potentially there, down the drain, turn 1. And do I feel bad when I peel off enemy units in turn 1 with rock lobbers before they've had a chance to move? The answer to that would be a little bit. Not very much, though, because the amount of points that I pay for the rock lobbers, you expect at least 1 to hit each turn on average, and they're not going to be much use if the enemy gets right up in my face at the end of the game. So it's nice to get some killing done. Next, the Sniffs. They put 5 damage onto these centaurs on the hill, so making a start on them. I believe the enemy forces do have some access to healing abilities, so I was attempting to focus fire where possible. And this wizard here, he would have used his lightning bolt at such long range. You can see a nice close-up of all the blood effects going on here while we're lingering on this shot. That lightning bolt actually wavered this beast pack here. I think they're called beast pack for the herd, but they've become wavered as a result of 1 damage being put on them. So, wow, not nice for them at all. And now we're clearly into my opponent's turn, because the wall's been moved out the way for convenience, so we don't have to balance these units on top of it, but a double lichen charge of doom into the Rabble Horde, and also the beast pack into the trolls. Now, I'm not sure whether I intentionally left them in range of the beast pack or not. That could have been an error, or it could have been intentional, but I actually don't remember. And then these brutes, and that would be the Lichen Alpha right there, I think, have come up in support. So what I'm thinking is, if the rabble get killed immediately, I've got counter charges available to me here. So I'm not overly concerned by this. And over here, you can see the advances on with everything else. I'm liking the fact that little Paul is really far away from the enemy battle line, because that means he's not going to be providing that rallying to and the very inspiring to the enemy over there. So he's kind of out on his own. So that could be a mistake. And 1 damage done to the trolls. It's not going to worry them at all. 10 damage done to the Rabble, but that's borderline enough to worry them. But as you can see, they've not been taken off, so they're going to be able to countercharge somebody. Turn 2. And we're looking at Rock Lobbers again, so I'm going to guess 2 of them hit once again. And what did they kill? Oh, look at that. They killed the unit of Lycans. The 2 units that I was eyeing up as Rock Lobber targets are now both dead in the first 2 turns. So you can't really ask for better than that as far as a start. So that has really crippled the enemy lines here. This side, the side I was focusing my attention on, is now very, very weak. And as long as I don't do anything silly now, I should be able to maintain this advantage, you would think. So I double charge, countercharge with the Rabble, and also charge the Mawbeasts into this unit of Lycans. It looks like I've got 7 damage on them, but didn't actually remove them. But I'm not concerned about that anymore. And the trolls don't actually kill this beast pack either, so they're up to 7 as well. We've got a new face in the chat by the looks of it. Daryl Carter, hello to you. And over here we had the small unit of Mawbeasts and the Bruiser charged into the Guardian Brutes and put 4 damage on them. So that's going to be a bit of a longer slog through them. Oh, and what's this wizard done? There we go again. Wavers that same unit 2 turns in a row by just doing 1 damage. So even though he's primarily built for his blood boiling abilities, that Lightning Bolt 3 is still very handy just to throw out at long range before he's able to use his primary spell, shall we say, which is more of a late game spell, you would imagine, when units have already taken lots of damage. And the Spitters, they must have done something because there's a picture of them, and they put 2 damage onto the... I can't remember the name of him, but he is the Guardian Brute hero. And there we have the Fleabag Sniffs. They've taken a point of damage earlier on from the Centaurs on the hill. And they waver the Centaurs with the second round of firing, putting them up to 7 damage. So they're not going to be able to shoot next turn. And then I should be able to finish them off the turn after that. I think that's a corpse pile down there, so don't go thinking that's another unit. You can also see, I believe that all the terrain pretty much is on the right-hand side of the table. And I wanted to leave big open spaces for my Rock Lobbers with these walls out in the middle, which would hopefully slow down the enemy. Because a lot of the herd stuff does have Pathfinder, but of course that's not going to prevent you suffering a hindered charge when going over a wall. So strategic thinking on the terrain there. And you can see what's going on now. You can see that I've got my trolls and my Mincer and little Paul waiting to wade into the action as well. So this is looking very bad for the enemy here. Over on this side as well, there's 3 enemy units that are a threat, but they're all a little bit spread out and not very close to the action. So I'm going to be able to shoot them. And these trolls are moving in as well. Down here, when the Lycans struck back, they get 5 damage onto the Mawbeasts, but that's not going to be enough to get rid of them. I'm taking a bit of a risk because I don't have any inspiring over here. And the trolls take a bit of damage from the beast pack as well. Only another 1, I think. It's hard to tell with trolls because there's regen that comes into it as well. And here, what's this? Something's died. Now, I believe that is the Troll Bruiser has been killed by the Guardian Brutes, who have then gone backwards by the looks of it. Turn 3. So you can see that those Lycans are now dead. These 2 units finish them off. And that's going to be a Shaman back there who's now in trouble. The Trolls finish off the Beast Pack. And you can see here that actually this This is the Lycan Alpha, I think. That charged into the Mincer the previous turn and only did about 1 damage, so didn't kill it, and then got double charged by the Mincer and Little Paul, so that's taken some damage as well. And over here, you can see that that Shaman has been wavered. That'll be as a result of shooting. The enemy Little Paul got wavered after 7 damage under the Troll Assault. And over here, the Wizard has killed whatever was there. Which, what was that? That was possibly the Guardian Brute hero. I think it was. So it must have been shot. The Spitters are down there, so they probably did some damage to it. And then I think I may have blood boiled to finish it off. So that is dead. Over on this side, the Centaurs have come down. And these Guardian Brutes are getting right in the face of the Sniffs, who are probably going to die. But I'm not concerned about that at all, because I've got the major advantage on the other side of the table, and I can swing some stuff around over there in a minute if I really need to get more killing done. Oh, the Centaurs do a bit of damage to these trolls, the ones that were fighting Little Paul. And over here, the Mincer becomes wavered as a result of the Lycan Alpha. So the Lycan Alpha was desperate to finish off the Mincer, but hasn't been able to achieve that, which means I think this could be a flank charge from Little Paul coming up in a second. We'll see. And then we've got Beast Pack versus Mawbeast action. That's going to be a fun little fight, but ultimately probably meaningless to the overall scenario. Turn 4. So these units have just pushed forward into the opponent's half, I think, a little bit, which is why they're now encroaching into the document area, which, as you know, when there are no space between tables at a tournament, there is a certain part that you always leave in your deployment zone for your dice piles and your army lists and such. And now I'm displaying terrible sportsmanship here by moving units into that area designated for non-gaming aspects of the game. Over here you can see the trolls are just circling the carcasses, and it's not going very well for the herd at all at this stage. Oops, went through 2 images there. Okay, so it looks like it was a front charge in the end for Little Paul, represented by Harambe, so got up to 6 damage on the Alpha now. Over here, the enemy Little Paul is dead. The trolls finished him off. And the Wiz, what does he do? I think he blood boils the Centaurs probably and kills them off. So, dead. We've got... I think we've got another person popped up in the chat. Ah, it's Mr. Lawrence Jameson in there. Okay, next. So I believe that would have been the Spitters then. They've put some damage onto these brutes here and wavered them. So it's really just a mopping up process now. Although those Mawbeasts do go down to give my opponent some more kill points. And this battle's raging on still. But that is the end. So, with the end result, I don't think I actually took any pictures after the game had ended. But I can tell you that I did manage to kill everything. So these were killed by the trolls. And I think this would have been a double charge here with the Mincer and Little Paul that finished off the Alpha, and those were the only remaining units. So I managed to kill everything, which gives me total kill points of 2,145 when you include the 150 for the Living Legend. So 20 points, maximum points, and very pleased with that, of course, to start the tournament off with a huge win. And the scenario didn't even come into it in the end because everything was dead. So, on to round 2. Here we go. So, this is the Occupy scenario. And there is an objective in the center of the table. Both players place an objective fairly close to the center, somewhere along the line, and then they also have one back in their deployment area, which is worth quite a bit if the opponents can get onto it, and worth nothing to the army that started on it. So you're encouraged to go towards the enemy a bit. Now I'm up against the League of Rordia here, which is an army you may have seen in some of my battle reports actually. And prior to this game, I had not won against this army before. I have beaten the League of Rordia before, but not this particular army. And I do have a copy of this list actually, so I can give you a bit of insight onto what all these units are, I think. Now, with the terrain layout, again, I wanted nice open spaces because I want my rock lobbers to have the best possible line of sight. But the enemy aren't to be sniffed at either when it comes to shooting, because there are 2 volley guns in there, which are always a bit of a thorn in my side. I don't really have much that deals with them easily. I could perhaps do with something like a bigot mounted on a Fleabag who can just run around and charge into things like that on his own. But we shall see. Okay, so let's look at the forces. Right, we have 2 Ranger cavalry troops there for the Rordians. We have some Honor Guard. We have a Duke on winged Arrowles. I believe that's what that one is there. Then we have more Honor Guard on the ground there. Then Dogs of War. The Dogs of War behind the volley guns seems to be a very common strategy for the Rordians nowadays. Pretty solid and pretty scary prospect. There's also an engineer between them and a sergeant as well. I think that one's the sergeant, that one's the engineer probably. So I think the engineer gives elite, I believe, to the... Do the halfling volley guns have elite by default, or do they need an engineer there? I think the engineer gives them elite. Then we've got some spearlings. There's a regiment there, and a horde, and another regiment. So all the infantry units have ensnare, which is very, very difficult to deal with. I think they all have phalanx and ensnare. Phalanx isn't a big issue for my army because I don't really have any thunderous charge that I can think of in there. But ensnare is a big deal because I don't really have elite troops. Trolls, being the hardest hitting thing I've got, hit on 4s. And as soon as you reduce that to 5s, I know psychologically hitting on 5 seems like you're going to be missing most of the time. In reality, of course, you are going to be missing slightly more than you're hitting. But I think it's the psychological barrier of knowing that you're suddenly going to be hitting on 5s. Maybe it makes you hesitant because you feel like potentially you're going to do very few hits, even though statistically you will still get some through. But I think hitting on 4s is where you're more confident. Maybe that's just me. If anyone's got any thoughts on that, let me know. Okay, so I think we've gone through everything in the opponent's list. There's another, that will be another sergeant perhaps at the back there. Looking at the list now. Oh no, that actually is that could be the Living Legend, or that one could be the Living Legend. One of them is anyway. And the Living Legend that was selected by the forces of Rordia was John the Ale Chemist. And his special abilities. He is speed 8, he's cavalry and individual. Has a lot of spells. He's got Fireball 10, Heal 6, Banechant 3, Weakness 2. And once per game can use all of those spells at the same time. So a very potent character there, potentially, if you can use him wisely. Okay, moving on. My setup here. So this is on my left flank. We've got the Mawbeasts, a Trombone, hiding behind the woods. We've got more beasts. The Mincer and Little Paul back there. We've got the Rock Lobbers down here. And then on the field, now this was perhaps a mistake setting up in a field with all this stuff because it's going to be very slow going if I should want to advance. But I'm not planning on doing that much advancing because I'm feeling confident in my Rock Lobber's ability to hit. So I'm thinking I'm going to try and encourage him to come forward, but we shall see. So I've got a big troll block behind there, all 3, plus the Bruiser. Then we've got the Spitters over there, and another Rock Lobber facing in that direction, the other War Trombone and various individuals lurking over here. You can see I've got my dice pile on the side. The dice are looking a bit red in that shot, actually, but I can assure you they are pure orange. And you can see the objectives in the center here. Now, I think both of us had the same idea that we wanted to create kind of a narrow fight because we were confident in our shooting abilities, so we wanted to create a killing field in the middle. So looking at it again now, perhaps I could have spread them out a little bit more, because I think my army is more built to spread out than my opponent's. And perhaps with my war machine's extra range, I could have taken advantage of that maybe. But we both wanted this kind of killing field that we were going to try to force the enemy to move into. And the enemy's primary objective is underneath the Dogs of War there. So if I want to get a couple of juicy points, I'll have to get through there. And mine is at the back here among the trolls. So, turn 1. And the enemy do advance. Now, I don't know whether I just forgot at the time or I just didn't notice, but the volley guns have actually moved forwards. And I either forget that or I wasn't aware of it at all when it comes to my turn, and you'll see how that affects my judgment. Over on this side, the Ranger Cavalry have moved up. And also the Honor Guard moved up as well, but I don't think you can see them in this shot. They went quite bold, actually, pretty far forward, trying to get in my face a bit. And those Rangers put damage onto my Fleabags there, my Sniffs. Okay, turn 1. There's a picture of a Rock Lobber. That means something's going to happen. There's a picture of the Super Duper Mega Rock Lobber. And also a picture of this wizard and that wizard. And what do you know? Both units of Honor Guard dead in turn 1. The most expensive halfling units, most expensive Rordian units, let's see how much they are. 275 points each. Both of them dead from shooting in turn 1. Wow. So Dave Doge has just jumped in to the chat and wants to know how I did. In game 1, it was a large win. This is game 2. So the Honor Guard are dead. I still have to worry about the Duke, who is winged and dangerous, but that is a big plus for me there. Just look at that huge gaping hole in the enemy lines just from shooting. So I'm feeling quite confident at this stage that I've taken out the biggest threats. It's definitely not all over at this stage, though, especially with it being a scenario with objectives like this. You can win with very few units left in something like this. And no, Mr. Doge, I'm refusing to pronounce it as Dave Dog from now on. Okay, turn 2. The volley guns open fire, and if we just go back a couple of pictures, you'll see I did not advance here, because I either forgot or didn't notice the volley guns had crept forward an inch, which means they're in range to shoot. I'd stayed back thinking I'd be safe from them for another turn. So I don't know how I overlooked that. So I should have been advancing on them at this stage. But I didn't. So they're going to unleash some fury, and they actually kill a character. The one that was there. Which one was that? Let's see. It was... I don't know. Well, we'll see which one's missing in a minute, won't we? So they kill one of the individuals and put damage onto the spitters. The Duke gets into the War Trombone, which I'm not overly concerned about, because I have got some stuff around here that can actually hurt him a little bit. And his nerve is 13, 15, so I don't need to get a huge amount of damage on him before I can stop him in his tracks. And of course the War Trombone dies, as you'd expect. And then I do begin the advance. Now that I have actually noticed that the volley guns are advancing, or did advance, and they're now in range, I decide I might as well go for it, pile everything forwards at once. He's probably not going to be able to kill everything before I get there. Little Paul is a bit slower than everyone else, though. Then, over here, you can see that the Duke has moved, and down here these two units use their lightning bolts and manage to kill one of the units of Ranger Cavalry, which is nice. And over here, I've got my Flaggit behind enemy lines and lobs a grenade into them, which does 1 damage. So on the previous turn, I'd set this up by running behind the hill, and the Flaggit is so fast and annoying, you can't really put much into dealing with him. Over here, we've got Trolls versus the Duke. He's up to 4 damage. I would have liked to have done more than that, though. And my Spitters are actually moving forwards as well, because they didn't really have any juicy targets at this stage. They were out of range to shoot at what they wanted to. And this guy, I didn't want to shoot at him. I think that might be the Ale Chemist. Could be. So I didn't really want to be shooting at individuals. More beasts have gone up. They're going to hope to attract a bit of fire as well. And turn 3. So the Duke, because I didn't manage to kill him, he was able to see, because he's so tall, I think he's height 4, he was able to see this rock lobber over the trolls and was able to then charge it, which is going to end badly for my rock lobber there. Although the rock lobbers have already done more than their fair share of damage in this game. Then, the Ranger Cavalry, what do? Well, they put some damage onto these guys. Look at all those dice being rolled there. That's probably for a volley gun, that set of dice rolls there. So the volley guns, they damage the Rabble Horde. Not too much. And the Duke, of course, kills the rock lobber. Now, look at this little situation we've got here. So, these Mawbeasts made a hindered charge in there. These ones made a hindered charge. I decided I might as well just get right in their faces while the trolls are coming in. So a bit of damage was dished out, and I'm just trying to get a start on it so that when the trolls get there, hopefully I'll be in a better position to kill things. The War Trombone does a damage to that horde as well, which isn't enough, really. Flaggit. The Flaggit kills the other Ranger troop with his grenade. The grenade had quite good accuracy. And there's my battle line still moving up. And essentially I am walking into a hail of volley gun fire, but I'm out of the difficult terrain now, so I'm going to be able to start moving faster. Over here, these trolls are really distracted by this Duke, and they've been taken out of the game pretty much. There's nothing left over here for them to fight. They're far away from the objectives, and this guy can just choose not to engage them by running around, dancing all over the place, and I can't chase him. All I can do is chase him and cast spells at him, really. And you can see how it's looking here. You can see, as far as objectives go, I'm probably in the lead at the moment because I'm in control of this one. But I'm not just going to sit there all game and eat volley gun fire. That would be a bad idea. Turn 4. So my opponent manages to kill both of the Mawbeast units with the spearlings. I think this one got double charged. So they're just sitting there prime to be attacked now by all my units. You can see, though, that this unit of Rabble became wavered by more gunfire, which is really bad because they're now in the way of everything else. And the Duke is set up to strike, which is not good at all. Over here, my 2 wizards, or the wizard and the hand grenade wielding Flaggit, put some more damage onto this guy, but it's still not enough. This Duke is a thorn in my side at this stage. So you can see I make a terrible mistake here. I turn this unit of trolls to face him, and then I leave the Bruiser too far away, forgetting that this guy is so tall and he can see over the top of them. And he does actually have a space to rear charge the Troll Bruiser there. And that would leave me with nothing to charge him with next turn because no one's looking to cover that space there. So that's a bit of a mistake. So I should have had the Bruiser. Because he's nimble, I could have had him move closer to the trolls and then face that way, had I remembered that this guy was so tall. But it is easy to forget, I suppose, what height certain units are supposed to have, because it's not always representative on the model. And that's not just the models that people choose either. Even Mantic's official range is a bit confusing on that front. You've got things like Tortured Souls that are supposed to be height 2, but they're actually just regular infantry sized. Right, next. So you can see here that my line is getting a bit fractured now. I've moved this unit up out of the charge arcs of spearlings, and they may be out of the firing arc of that volley gun as well, I'm not sure. But they're getting in there, they're getting ready to attack somebody. And down here, the other trolls were defending against the Winged Duke, who is a total nightmare. If I'd killed the Winged Duke, then I would have had a nice, simple advance, shall we say. But because he's there, everyone's having to turn to face different directions, because a troll horde does not want to be flank charged by him at all. Okay, here's a nice different angle we've got here. So as far as the objectives go, there's one there and one there. So it's pretty close. We're contesting an area that all the objectives are on, so it's just whoever wins the fight overall is probably going to be sitting on more of them. We don't seem that interested in pushing all the way through to the enemy back objectives, which would earn us more points. Turn 5. So as I pointed out, I left too much of a gap there, which allowed the Bruiser to get charged by him and also by, I think that's a sergeant. So he may very well die there because of my foolishness. And the troll is now in a useless position as well because of that. The volley guns, well, they managed to kill the troll horde that was there. So obviously I couldn't quite get out of the firing arc, but I had to get as far forward as possible so that next time I could charge something. Because I wanted to get close, because the objectives at the back there and the volley guns are just being a nightmare. But dead trolls. I think it was a very good roll to kill them, to be fair. Then, well, look at that. The Bruiser actually survived that bruising encounter, which is nice. Only 6 damage on him. He's not the easiest to take down, especially when you're landing in difficult terrain. Over here, you can see he's swinging in from this flank now with the spearlings, and my trolls are facing the wrong way. So that's not going to be a fun time. I'm going to have to spend a turn turning round because they've got no targets. Over here, these trolls charge into that guy who could be the ale chemist. It's either the ale chemist or the sergeant, I'm not sure. 5 damage on him. Dave Doge thinks I win this game by a whisker. Well, let's see how it goes, shall we? So, Troll Bruiser countercharges into the Duke, mainly because I didn't want him flying off anywhere. So, I had to put some damage on him. Managed to do so, but not that much. And little Paul is now looking in this direction as well. These trolls here are trying to get back into the action after they were left way out over on the other side, along with the Flaggit who's coming in hoping to start lobbing grenades. Overview of how the battlefield's looking. So at this stage, the objectives, that one is being controlled by the enemy. Neither of us have reached our opponent's primary objective, so we won't be scoring for that. These trolls look like they're holding this, and this one doesn't look like it's within 3 inches of any non-individuals. So it looks close at the moment. Looks like we've got 1 objective each. Final turn. So the trolls, because they charged that guy and weren't able to kill him with absolutely terrible rolling. I mean, let's go back here and look at that one again. So the situation the trolls were in, I must have just been able to see him for the charge. Went into that character thinking, well, I'll easily kill that, and then turn around on the spot to face this spearling horde. But only doing 5 damage. Absolute nightmare round of attacks. So the trolls are now left with their flank pointing towards the enemy, as you can see here. So the luck was not with me there. So all that potential luck that was required in the first turn for killing off both honor guard, it's slowly being unravelled as the game goes on. So in this turn, of course, the trolls are going to get charged in the flank by the spearling horde, which is very bad news. The Bruiser may get killed, may not. It's a toss-up at this stage. And he gets wavered in the end, which is all right. The trolls who got charged in the flank only get wavered, but it's the one troll unit that can't do anything while wavered. No upgrade on them, and they paid the price. Now, one thing here, let's check. How much damage did they take? They took 6 damage. I'm not sure if I remembered the rallying for little Paul, or whether he was within 6 inches to actually give them rallying too or not. He may be just outside 6 inches there. But they became wavered regardless, and little Paul got into the action a bit there. Did he actually attack someone there? Yes, it looked like he rear-charged the Duke and killed that off finally, but it's already done its job. It's already fully disrupted my battle line, so it doesn't matter that I've killed it. Over here, I'm moving into position, hoping there's a turn 7, because these trolls are completely out of sight of the volley guns, and they're going to be able to charge into the Dogs of War, or at the very least move that way and get nearer the objective. And also, I've got a grenade waiting down there with their name on it. And you can see here there's an objective there being contested by those 2 units now. They're both hordes. This one here, I don't think anyone is within 3 inches of it. Or they might be, and then there's that one up there as well that no one is next to at the moment. And a 1 is rolled. So that is the end of the game. So it must be, these 2 were both within 3 inches of this, I think, actually. But the Bruiser only has unit strength 1, and that unit, I think, is a horde. Oh no, it's a regiment, so it has unit strength 2. So nobody has this objective. Nobody has that objective. Nobody has got the primary objectives. So the only objective that's worth points to anybody is that one, because the Rordians have higher unit strength on it. So they win by 1 point of unit strength on this objective. So you can't get much closer than that. And in fact, the kill points for that game, we killed pretty much equal amount of enemy troops. But it's a loss. So with the amount of stuff I killed, I ended up with 8 tournament points. You get 10 for a win, 5 for a draw, 3 for a loss. And then the amount of stuff that you kill adds on a maximum of 10. So I must have earned 5 from the kill points. So I killed less than 1,000, and I think my opponent killed just over 1,000. So he killed roughly the same amount of stuff, and he just managed to take it by virtue of having that 1 extra unit strength on this objective here. Wow, wow, wow. So mistakes were made. I think I should have spread the game out more, because my enemy was built to be compact with all these infantry units, and the volley guns with their short range compared to the rock lobbers, I could have spread the game out a bit more and put objectives further afield from each other, and that would have perhaps benefited me. Also, I made obviously the mistake turning the Troll Bruiser around, which allowed the Duke to annoy me for another turn, but he was going to be annoying regardless. Once the War Trombones go down, I don't have that much to deal with flyers. I've only got a few lightning bolts to throw at them, and that's not many attacks to be taking down something like a Winged Duke, which is, let's see what the nerve on that thing is. Duke on Winged Arrowlers, 13-15. So just throwing a few lightning bolts at him probably isn't going to be enough. Anyway, so 1 big win and 1 narrow loss so far. So we'll take that. There's still 3 games to go. And here we go. Game 3. This is the control scenario, and the goblins are clearly not at home here because we are on some kind of hideous lava landscape, which suits very much the opposition, who happen to be abyssals, and there are also some allied ratkin as well. So someone made a comment about the snow melting on this table. Is that going to be the case? Are the goblins just going to sink into the lava? Or are they going to put out that fire and extinguish it once and for all? We shall see. So with the control scenario, the battlefield is divided up into 6 2-by-2-foot sections, and for each one you have more unit strength in at the end. You gain a victory point, and if you control the central area in the opponent's half, then you get 2 victory points. Now, my opponent placed this piece of terrain in the middle here. This is a huge piece of blocking terrain, presumably with the idea of limiting what my rock lobbers can see. However, it does create an interesting dynamic because it's split the table almost completely in 2. It's so huge that we've almost got 2 games going on here. I've put half my army on that side and half on that side, and it looks like he's got slightly more on this side over here than down here. But these are pretty potent units, which I'll get to in a minute as I'm going through his list. So there's also some woods there, So this side is more open as far as line of sight for the rock lobbers. And there's not much height in the opposing army, though, which is not what I like to hear when I've brought rock lobbers, because I like to be able to shoot over the top of my own height 1 troops, or even height 2 troops, if you're looking at the likes of trolls. So I like to see height 2 and 3 units in the enemy lines, and there's not many of them at all in this army. We'll get to them in a moment, though. So here's my setup. On the right flank, I've got my Sniffs all the way down on this side. I've got the Rabble. I started off putting terrible units on this side, and as I realised he was committing more and more stuff over there, I then compensated by putting trolls, war trombone, a couple of characters down there. Nothing right in the middle, because as you can see, there's that huge piece of terrain blocking. So on this side, we've got the Mincer, we've got Little Paul, we've got the Wizard with the Blood Boil, we've got most of the Trolls and the Bruiser. We've got one of the rock lobbers I've put on the front row because most of his troops are height 1, so I want to be able to see something at the start of the game. And there must have been something that's above height 1, though, because I put this one right behind the Spitters, who are in difficult terrain. And then we've got more beasts over there. And this one right in the corner, so it's always going to have something to shoot at throughout the game, hopefully, down on this flank. Okay, so my opponent's army. That'll be a Ratkin weapons team there. This is on the, as I look at it, the right flank. There are 4 units of succubi who are really annoying, actually. They have, I think they have stealthy and ensnare. So shooting at them or attacking them in close combat is troublesome. And there is also a flying lady there, as I think it's the Abyssal Temptress, I think she's called. So succubi heavy on this side. On the other side, we've got lower abyssals, a horde and a regiment. We've got some gargoyles, some molochs, tortured souls, just a small unit there. And I believe that is Little Paul, so the same living legend as the one I'm using. An Ifrit, and I think the Ifrit actually has an item on it to make its shooting even more dangerous. They are nasty, those things. And down here we've got a unit of Ratkin. I'm pretty sure they're just a basic unit, nothing too scary. And I think that's everything. So, turn 1. Looks like I get turn 1. The advance is on. I'm keeping these trolls and the Mincer and Little Paul as support here for this lot. I'm hoping to shoot some things off, but I know I'm not going to be able to completely dominate with shooting in this game, mainly because of the height of everything, so I'm not going to be able to see all of the enemy units at all times with my rock lobbers. On this side, I stay back a bit. Not as kind of an advance, but I haven't gone completely all out. I've only moved up to within shooting range pretty much with these guys. But I do want to get towards the center of the board, though, and then maybe I can make a push for the enemy's central area at the end. So my opponent has moved up all these succubi, some of which have taken a bit of shooting damage already, but not much with them being stealthy. And over here, the tortured souls immediately go into the Mawbeasts. Now, I believe I left that intentionally open because I want to be able to countercharge with things, and I don't think they'll take out the Mawbeasts in one hit. This thing here isn't a piece of terrain, by the way. I don't think it is. I think it was just there to hold the table number down. And you can see this line set up here. It's got a lot of units converged on this area here. The gargoyles are staring into this zone, which is dangerous, because they don't have a massive amount of combat troops over there. This whole thing here is quite slow, so I'm not worried about that just yet. Although Molochs and Little Paul are juicy targets for my rock lobbers because they're taller than everything else. The Ifrit kills one of my heroes instantly by doing 12 damage to it. Which hero was it? It was this wizard. So, wow, he's dead. The Mawbeasts become wavered by the tortured souls, so as I suspected, they weren't going to be killed in one go. Turn 2. The Spitters shoot, and the rock lobbers shoot. And look at that, they kill the gargoyles. So they are dead. one of his flying units down. Flyers are very useful in this scenario, especially for the end of the game when you can hop between different board sections to claim points. So I'm glad I've got them toasted. Over here, the Sniffs and the Wizard with the Lightning Bolt 5 managed to kill off one of these Succubi units, so there's only 3 left now. So this is kind of a standoff going on here. So it's very clear that it's 2 totally separate games going on the same board because of that big blocking piece of terrain there. Over on this battle, the lack of gargoyles there is making it look a lot healthier because they were a threat, and now it looks pretty much in my favour. And I've got the speed advantage with my trolls on virtually everything he's got to offer in the centre here. So you can see the Tortured Souls have taken some damage, so I must have shot at them with something. Down here, the Tortured Souls go into the Spitter Horde. He doesn't want to be shot. And then the Ratkin go into the Mawbeasts, hoping to finish them off. Over on this side, I think he's being very cautious. You can see I've got a Holy Hand Grenade wielding Fleabag Flaggit down there, who lobbed it at those Succubi and did some damage from the relative safety of the woods. Over here, kind of a standoff. He doesn't want to come into my charge range too much, but I think he has left a couple of things in there. I believe the Molochs have been left in charge range of these 2 units here, possibly. Then this weapon team takes out one of my, I think that's one of my heroes it manages to kill. Let's see. Was it a hero? Maybe, was it that guy? Or was it the Mawbeasts? Well, I can't work it out right now. But it killed something, hence the picture of an empty space. And this guy, this Ifrit, manages to waver my Flaggit with just 1 damage. So the Mawbeasts are dead, the ones that were charged over on my left flank. But the Spitters managed to hold on against the Tortured Souls, only taking 5 damage. I did tell you, it takes quite a while to chew through these Spitter Hordes with their 1921 nerve, and of course being in difficult terrain as well. Turn 3. So there's a bit more advancing going on here. And I've put the War Trombone intentionally in charge range of the Succubi just so I can shoot them, I think. And if they were to charge the War Trombone, of course, I've got Trolls and I've got the Rabble here. Look, I'm just peppering damage slowly onto these units. It's slowly building up. So I'm hoping I'll be able to kill them off by the end. Up here, I do take the double charge on the Molochs with the Trolls and the Troll Bruiser, and I managed to kill them in one go. The Troll Bruiser was not hindered, but the Trolls were. Still managed to chew through them in one go. Overran the Bruiser to make space for the Trolls to pivot on the spot, which means that this unit of Lower Abyssals now can't see them. They're not in their charge arc, but this Horde can see them, so they could charge them in the front if they wished. The Troll Bruiser needed to overrun that far. Then the Tortured Souls take some damage from the Spitters, so that's going to be an interesting fight. Oh, we've got pictures of rock lobbers. What could that possibly mean? And a picture of another one. Oh, look at that. That is the death of the enemy's little Paul from direct rock lobber hits. Wow, wow, wow. So all the enemy units above height 1 are now dead. So the rock lobbers have fulfilled 90% of their usefulness. And here you can see a nice overview of this left-hand side battle raging. He's got a double charge on the Spitters now, so we'll be hoping to kill them pretty soon, although the Ratkin will be hindered when they go in there. These Abyssals, the Lower Abyssals, are going to have a hard time taking out this lot, and this battle here is going to be an interesting one. So, the Temptress charges into the War Trombone, and the Succubi, some of them are just hanging back. These trees here are providing a little bit of nuisance because certain units don't want to charge through them at each other, so there's a bit of a standoff. And this unit have gone into the Rabble. Now, I would expect the Rabble to stand up to 1 unit of Succubi, charging them in the front. So, the weapons team kills something by the looks of it. But what was it? It was the Mincer. Shot it in the flank then. So the Mincer is dead now. Oh, I think it was the Efreet that maybe did that. Maybe the weapon team helped out. Or maybe there's just a picture of that for no reason. But I think the Efreet definitely finished off the Mincer because he was shooting it in the flank. So it's dead. And look at that. That one troop of Succubi did 13 damage to the Rabble Horde and killed them in one go. Those things are quite beastly in combat, but I wouldn't expect them to be that beastly. That was a very good roll there. The Temptress, of course, kills the War Trombone. And this Horde, with making a hindered charge into the Trolls, only do 2 damage. Which I'm very happy with. And the Spitters are still surviving, up to 13 damage, but he couldn't remove them. So they're hanging on, and they're holding these 2 units up, which could otherwise be troublesome. The Tortured Souls in particular could turn around and cause havoc flying around all over the place. Turn 4. Oh, by the way, I think I may have lied. I think the Tortured Souls are actually height 2, so they're the only height 2 unit left for the enemy. Okay, over here, you can see that the Sniffs have moved up out of charge arcs of everything and then fired into the flank of these Succubi, along with a lightning bolt, and that's wavered them. And here these Trolls have charged into the Temptress and done 4 damage, by the looks of it. And they haven't exposed their flank to anyone that can actually see them, so they're only going to be taking front charges. There is a unit up here, but they're behind the woods. Dave Doge says, I'm like Rocky Balboa, I get beat down, but I just keep getting up. I don't think I get beat down that often. I think that's a bit harsh. And here, you can see, look at that. 3 units that have all turned round. So these 2 Troll units, I think, combined to kill the lower Abyssal Horde. I think these ones went into the flank, these ones into the front. And the Bruiser has just moved back out of the difficult terrain into this area to get back into the game a bit. So the Abyssal Horde dead. And look at this. The Spitters kill the Tortured Souls in close combat. How embarrassing to be a Tortured Soul. The War Trombone puts 2 damage onto the Ratkin unit there. And then there is nothing in this picture. So something must have died. Or maybe I was just taking a picture of that, if that's a weapon team. And this guy as well, this Efreet was dancing around. And this guy as well was dancing around, just so they couldn't be charged by my Trolls and then firing damage into them. So these Trolls are up to 9 damage and they became wavered now. This unit have been double charged. So this one could actually see them just about past the woods. And they were not able to do that much damage between them, though, because they would have been hindered. So only 7 damage on the Trolls there. And finally, the Ratkin unit are joined by the small unit of lower Abyssals, and they take out the Spitter Horde, finally. So the Spitter Horde have held up quite a formidable fighting force, and these guys are vulnerable now. They don't really have space to rotate because they're so tightly packed. They could face directly at 90 degrees that way, I think, but they don't have many options outside of that. Or could they? I believe they could, yes, but I'm not sure that would be advisable because they'd be opening up sides to other units. So that's what they end up doing. They end up facing that way, like I suggested, but the Ratkin look forward still so they can possibly go after the rock lobbers. You can see one of the rock throwers has actually turned around to face that direction because there are enemies over in that battle over there on the right-hand side, as I look at it, that need the support more than this side. So I actually turned it round so I could start shooting down there next time. A nice overview of the battlefield here, so you can see why I've turned it round, because it's looking a bit healthier for the Abyssals over there. Down here, they've only got these 2 regiments that are kind of surrounded, and all these Trolls. The Efreet is a worry, but my strategy on this side in particular was to go for units that will score points in the scenario. I was ignoring the individuals to some extent, because obviously they're not going to have any unit strength to win on the scenario. So I was just going for the scoring units first, and I was regretting that kind of when the Ifrit was just blasting off flames into everybody and doing mass damage all over the place. So we'll see if I pay the price for ignoring that annoying little blighter, shall we say. Turn 5. So you can see there's been more annoyance from those characters, because I'm able to turn to look at them, but they're still going to be able to hide. I don't think I can guarantee that I can attack any of them, because they're just small and they can run between gaps, and these are just trolls. Over here, Little Paul goes into the lower abyssals, 3 damage, making a start on them, and pinning them in place as well. Because I don't want them running into my central area, because it's going to be difficult for the trolls to make it all the way down there, so I just want to hold them here. The War Trombone moves up into the flank of these Ratkin and wavers them as well, which is a huge deal, because it means the Rock Lobbers are going to survive and not be charged by them. Over here, I spotted a sneaky flank charge with the Sniffs into the Succubi that had attacked there, and the Trolls charged into the ones that had attacked them in the front. So the Trolls killed a unit. The Sniffs, even though they're a shooty unit, charging them into the flank of something is still advisable, and they killed them. I think Succubi only have a defense of 3. So if you're not attacking them in the front where they have Ensnare, then they can be taken down. So that's the only unit left over there, I think. These trolls, one troll unit, it looks like, have they been killed? I think they probably have, by the shooting from the Ifrit and this dude, which isn't nice, and he's positioned himself outside of my arc of view there and outside of the charge range of the Bruiser, I think. So Harambe, the Little Paul, takes 5 damage there from the lower abyssals in retaliation, but again, I'm not aiming to win this fight overall. I'm just holding them in place while I can get support down there. Turn 6. So I go back in, do some more damage in that combat. Up here, the Sniffs and the Trolls have just positioned themselves so they're covering 2 different sections of the table, because the dividing line is somewhere here. So these guys are holding this table section, these guys are holding this table section. So that's going to be 2 victory points, and the enemy doesn't have much around here to deal with that at all. Over here, War Trombone and the Rock Thrower. I think they kill the Ratkin unit that was there. Yeah, because they weren't close enough to prevent the Rock Thrower firing at it, and the Trombone was right there, so dead. Then the Temptress, who had abandoned that flank because it was looking like lost cause, has now come down here and wavered this Rock Lob. I'm not sure how much damage was done. Probably only a few. And Little Paul does go down to the lower abyssals. And here, this weapons team does 5 damage to the Sniffs, but can't take them out, so they're going to keep holding a table section. And the Trolls and the Bruiser are continuing to be danced around by the Ifrit and this dude, whose name I've forgotten. We do get turn 7, though. And at this point, the Sniffs just charge into the weapons team and kill it. And then what does the Rock Lobber do? Well, look at that. Dead unit of lower abyssals must have been hit by the Lobber and the Trombone as well. And over here, the shooting attacks piling up on the Trolls. 14 damage, but somehow couldn't remove them. So there was a once per game reroll of a single dice, but he must have already used it in this game, presumably, because this unit is still alive. I forgot to mention in the game against the League of Rordia, I used my reroll to kill off one of the Honor Guard units, because I needed about 10 on the dice to kill one of them, and I rolled a 6 and maybe a 2, so I re-rolled the 2, and it came up with just enough to kill them. So the re-roll was beneficial in that game. I can't remember what it was used for in this game, nor what my opponent's was, but he'd already used it by this stage, because a re-roll would have been enough to kill them, definitely. down here you can see that the Temptress kills off that Lobber. And there's how the battlefield looks at the end. So I'm holding this corner and that corner. The enemy have no scoring units left, by the way, only individuals. So the plan did actually pay off in the end. So I'm not controlling this section here because I only have war machines in there, so they can't hold it. I'm holding my opponent's middle section, though, which is worth 2, and this corner, I think. Or actually, I may have brought the Bruiser into this middle section as well to guarantee more points. So I've got 4 victory points. My opponent has 0. And I killed almost everything. Let's see. How many kill points did I get? 1,645. So there's just a few characters floating around that I couldn't quite chase down because they're annoying like that. And that was enough for 19 points out of 20 for me there. So that's 2 mammoth wins so far, and just that 1 narrow loss being the only negative there. So the 2 battles that took place here, I think I managed to position a good array of units on either side, which led to me having the advantage on both sides, I felt. I did feel like the units that I had down here were possibly a little bit weaker once I saw all the rules for the succubi, how they were going to be difficult to kill. But I think I was patient enough and just kept peppering away at them with shooting so that they would have to attack me eventually, and then they exposed flanks, which led to their downfall. And over here I was able to shoot off a couple of key units, and some of my Spitter Horde holding up some of his units as well was quite a big deal. And then surviving the shooting onslaught of the individual scum. For example, the Ifrit right there, who survived. That was quite a big deal. And on to the next round. So, round 4. And this is against the Varangur. And I think they have some allies in there as well, but I'll get to those in a second. It's mostly Varangur, though. Let me see. I think I've got a copy of this list, actually. Yes, I do. So it's Varangur with herd allies. So there are a few units of herd in there, though. So it's not just an alliance of a single unit like you sometimes see. And this is eliminate scenario, which means there is an objective in the center, which is worth a victory point, and there are 3 objectives per side, basically, which is to kill the 3 most expensive enemy units. And for me, that was the 3 troll units, and for my opponent, I'll get to which units that was shortly. But if you kill them with shooting, you only get 1 victory point. If you kill them in close combat, you get 2. So it's beneficial to kill them up close and personal. The terrain setup, I don't like it because there's a lot of tall buildings, and we played this as an impassable piece of terrain because it looks like that more than a hill, doesn't it? So height 4 things for this dragon to hide behind, and not a huge amount of lanes of fire to see through for my rock lobbers, and hills there as well, which are going to be an annoyance. I put 2 of the hills together just to reduce the amount of area that was covered by line of sight obscuring terrain. So, also his living legend is Matt the Muted. So his speciality, which I'm looking at right now, is speed 7, but he's got a lot of special rules. So piercing 2, crushing strength 1, vicious, vanguard, individual, stealthy, ensnare, and throwing weapons. So he's pretty much an assassin who can just sneak around the place. He's difficult to hit, and he can hit with laser precision on a target and possibly take it out. So we'll see how I do against him. But he vanguarded up pretty damn close, closer than I would like him to be to my lines, shall we say. So here's my setup. We've got the Sniffs, the Mawbeasts, the Rabble, and some units of trolls down on this side with the Mincer, Little Paul, War Trombone, and Wiz backing them up. And on this side, we have some Mawbeasts with the Flaggit hiding behind them. We have the Spitters, we have more trolls, the Bruiser, and all the rock lobbers, I think, are pretty much... There's 2 of them down this side, actually. 1 of them over here, because I wanted to cover the other area as well. But they're mostly aimed at the dragon's head. So the enemy have, let's see, I can actually get the names of all this stuff right, because it's right in front of me. So I believe this guy is Scald, who is mounted. And that's just a little hero. Then this unit here, they are Fallen. There's 2 units of Fallen. This is the first one. And this one has Mace of Crushing. There is a Beast Pack, which is the Herd allies there. And next to them, there is something as well. I'm not sure what that is, though, so I'll just ignore that for now. Then here, this will be the Tribal Hunters. So they are Herd allies as well, and they are a shooty type of unit. Over here, we have got the big, absolutely monstrous King on Chimera. So nerve 18-20, defense 5, so that's a big beastie with a breath attack, 10 attacks. It's got elite. It's got an upgrade on it, so it's got Headstrong and Fury, and he upgraded it to make it speed 11 as well. So that is the main target. All my Rock Lobbers started off the game aimed directly at its head. It's also one of the most expensive units, which means if I can kill that, I'll get victory points. Then there's another unit of the Fallen there. And in front of them, there is a unit of Centaur Bray Hunters. So they're a shooter unit as well, and the Centaur Chief next to them. Down on this side, we've got the Killer Cavalry of the Varangur, the Mounted Sons of Korgan, right there, who are cavalry, and they are very, very beastly indeed. Then there are 2 Mages Conclaves as well, which fire out a nasty amount of shooting because they have 36-inch range and blast D3 on their attacks. So at long range, with elite as well, with an upgrade, they can dish out some serious pain. And there's a central objective, turn 1. So, because he had vanguarded up there and then won the roll-off for turn 1 and was able to go first, immediately able to charge this Rock Lobber in turn 1. Wow, wow, wow. And at this point, I'm thinking it's maybe not game over, but it's looking very, very bad. Because his King on Chimera is also going to be able to hide, which you will see here. Hiding behind that piece of impassable terrain, so none of my Rock Lobbers can see it anymore. So, game plan potentially drastically changed just through the loss of the turn 1 roll-off there. He has put a unit of cavalry on a hill, though, which is nice, because I'll be able to shoot them. Down here is hiding the Fallen behind a house, not being too aggressive on this side. Here you can see a nice view of how this thing is hiding. So the Mage's Conclave kill something, and they put some damage onto this Rock Lobber as well. I think it was just a Rock Lobber that they killed, actually. Let's see if I can find a picture of my lines without going back through a zillion pictures. Well, I think it was the other Rock Lobber that they killed. And, right, where did we stop there? Okay, there we go. So Rock Lobber dead, Rock Lobber dead. 2 Rock Lobbers dead in turn 1 from shooting and a Vanguard charge. And I've got nothing that can attack this guy right now. I believe he's out of the arc of the Mincer, just. We'll see, though. Yes, he is. So I just advance everything up. I decided I'm going to have to ignore him because I can't just chase him around with anything, so I'll just shoot at him with what I can. So I've got the War Trombone, which has also taken damage from shooting, probably the Mage's Conclave, and the Wizard there as well. Advancing, ready to meet the threat head-on because that's impassable, so just trying to fight in this little narrow area here. Over on this side, I'm going to try to pepper with shots at the enemy and advance these Mawbeasts and lob grenades over their heads. I think that's what did damage to the Fallen, the grenade there. Turn 2. So he goes for some charges. And you'll notice that these butts are facing the enemy. That's because the spear points out too far and would get broken off probably if it was stabbing into the enemy. So the Mawbeasts wouldn't rest on the hill because they're in 2 halves. But you get the idea. They're supposed to be where the front half of it is there. Oh, you can see the thumb of the enemy there. So if you want to analyze players' thumbs, you've got the perfect opportunity. Let's have a look. It doesn't look like the nails are bitten or anything, so maybe not the most stressed of players, so maybe quite a relaxed person, not chewing on their nails out of stress. Quite a solid thumb, I would say. No obvious discoloration other than the shadow cast by his own miniature there. If anyone wants to give that thumb a rating on the official thumb scale, please do so in the chat. So he's made some charges. The heavy cavalry into my Sniffs, which I was quite happy to accept because I've got backup down here. And the Fallen into the Mawbeasts. Over here, the other Fallen are lurking around dangerously with the Centaur Chief. Beast pack into Mawbeasts, but they will be hindered by that wall. And over here, I'm not too dissatisfied actually, because all these 3 units, I believe, are his expensive units that I want to kill, and they're all tightly packed in one place. So if I can put kind of a crunch in on this area with my hard-hitting units, maybe I can get them taken out. We'll see, though. And look at that. War Machines being wavered at super long range by things is not fun. And the War Trombone being wavered as well. This is just all the long-range stuff that he's got that you wouldn't think, looking at the army, is that long range. But he's got lots of 24-inch bows, and he's also got his 36-inch range Magus Conclaves. And I think that's a dead War Trombone as a result of Matt the Muted. And he manages to kill the Sniffs, but I don't think he kills the Mawbeasts. I think he does waver them, though. So he turns around that unit to face, and he wanted to make sure that he wouldn't be charged in the flank by the Mincer, which is why you can see there that he's got his little arc of sight template out there. Being charged in the flank by a Mincer would be terrible news for that unit. So he's avoiding that at all costs. He wavers the Mawbeasts, though, and he thinks, right, I'm perfectly safe now. They're just being a roadblock. However, I do have a plan, which we'll get to in a minute. So the beasts kill those Mawbeasts, unfortunately, but I'm going to be able to dodge around them with this guy and lob grenades around the place, so he's not too concerned. Right, look at this. So you may notice that this unit has turned sideways. That is because Mawbeasts are nimble. So normally you'd only be allowed to move backwards or change facing, for example, while wavered. I think those are the only things you can do. So the Mawbeasts are able to move backwards and then use their nimble ability to turn side on, which allowed just a big enough gap for the Mincer to charge through and kill the Fallen in one hit. 7 damage on them, and it looks like, I've tried to position the dice on the hill, but it looks like I rolled 10 for the nerve. And I believe I used my reroll on that. Now I'm thinking back, because I used a reroll in similar circumstances, I think in game 2, I believe I said. I'm 99% sure I wasn't thinking of this one. I think I did a similar thing twice with the using of rerolls, but I definitely used it here to kill them 100% because I needed that. And yeah, I did the way I described the reroll earlier, though, I think was the way it happened in this game rather than game 2. So this is what happens when games are spread over 2 days. Occasionally memories are going to merge. I think people are generally impressed with my grasp of what happened in games that happened multiple days ago, though. So that's put a crimp on his style a bit, because I've just killed off one of his most expensive units in close combat, gaining 2 victory points. So I'm actually winning at this stage. So even though I'm probably down on positioning, I think I can play an avoidance game, possibly, and get a result out of this. If I just delay and keep the game slow and try not to make it a bloodbath. So let's see how that goes. So as I said, the Flaggit's just dancing around, lobbing grenades all over the place. And down here, I've got my trolls and the troll Bruiser moving forward just to face off with this threat here. Because if he goes all in on one of them, if he goes in on the troll unit to try and get victory points, there's a chance that the Bruiser will be able to join in on the counter charge. And I didn't want to move the Bruiser too far forward as bait because they're nimble, the Fallen, so they can just whiz round him. Turn 3. So, into the Spitter Horde with some Fallen. The Fallen that aren't more expensive. And the Beast Pack. And this guy as well. I think that's the Centaur Chief. So they decided to bypass the Trolls entirely. Which gives me an idea. Which we'll get to shortly. So, the Sons of Corgan into the flank of the Mincer. It's going to die, but it did its job killing that unit of Fallen there on its own in one go. And over here, you can see that this big King on Chimera has positioned itself so that it can be using its breath attack while not being charged. Which is annoying, but that's what you have to do with flyers. Land them in annoying places. If they've got breath attacks, you might as well use it. He doesn't want this guy to die because that would be 2 of his eliminate bounty units dead in close combat, possibly. So that would be terrible news for him. So he's got to keep him alive at all costs. And my Trolls, I'm hoping that I'll be able to just rotate them and survive as long as possible. And if I'm going to die, try and make sure it was to a breath attack, maybe, so it's less worth points. We shall see. Over here, there's a big gap, and I can't remember what was killed. Down here, you can see that Little Paul has taken some damage. I think he may have been the one that was breath attacked, actually. And something has died from here. Yep, it's the Mawbeasts. They got killed, finished off by some shooting. I think it was the Mage's Conclave that got them. And the Mincer is, of course, dead, but did its job. So I'm satisfied there. Over here, the Spitter Horde is dead as well. So a lot of my chaff is dead. All my bounty units are still alive, though. So I've got a plan for keeping them alive. And it's very complicated. So I think Matt the Muted killed off another war machine there. So look at this situation we've got here. My Trolls, whichever way they face, they were going to be charged by something, because the King on Chimera is down here somewhere, looking at their rear. And if they turn to face it, they'll be charged in the rear by Fallen and Beast Pack. If they try and turn to face everything, they can't, so they'll just be charged in the flank by everything. So they moved at the double that way as fast as they could go, leaving their rear open to the Fallen. But I'm trying to use my characters to block the charge, so they physically can't fit in there to charge them. And then next turn, I'll be able to charge in there, hopefully kill them, and then turn round and be prepared for the oncoming threat with my bounty unit that would then be alive far away from the enemy. That's the plan. Now, I wasn't able to just sit next to this unit of Fallen and block them in. With them being nimble, it was very, very difficult to do that. My opponent and I had a very long discussion about all this. And normally, if you're having discussions about kind of geometry and all this kind of angular nonsense in the middle of a game, it tends to kind of get nitpicky, and sometimes it gets annoying. But in this instance, we were actually both really enthusiastic about it because it was a fun, interesting situation that we were trying to navigate our way through. And I think we both actually enjoyed it, trying to work out what wasn't possible here. So I originally wanted to box this unit in by sitting at a jaunty angle on the corners so that it wouldn't be able to pivot around me properly. And it wouldn't have the necessary number of pivots to then make a charge over there. But we established that one of my guys would have, this guy here, this individual, he would have been able to pivot around him because somebody else could have charged him and dragged him out of position by forcing him to align in a certain way. So I decided, well, how about if I do this and try to just block this area between two pieces of impassable terrain with my two characters here. And that was the best I could do, I think. Well, that's what we thought. We wouldn't be able to work it out 100% without a really long pause to the game. So we just decided, well, you know what, I think this is the best way I can block it, so I'll go for it, and if you can find a way to get through it, then go for it. So these Trolls turn to face the King. those trolls turn to face the other way, knowing that they'll get charged in the back by the king on Chimera, but he is going to be hindered charging them, and they'd rather be charged in the rear by him than by the Fallen, which are over there. And little Paul is just looking over that way, moving towards the Sons of Korgan, which are kind of holding back because he doesn't want to lose another unit in close combat, another one of his bounty units. And my Rabble Horde are moving in on that same area, so you can have a look at them there. They're out of everyone's charge range, backing away because they are petrified. Turn 4. So this is what he comes up with in the end. So by positioning this individual here, he's then able to commit this one into a charge. Now, originally, he was trying to work out whether he could do this, and he positioned this guy here, and then tried to charge the wizard with Matt the Muted. But he was physically able to slide in front of this guy because his base is less than an inch, which meant that the wizard wasn't pulled out of position. So he had to use another cavalry hero to do it, which drags the wizard a couple of millimeters that way, which opens up a big enough gap for the Fallen to get through. So what we determined in the end was that the only way I physically could have prevented him from doing anything to block, the only way I could have physically blocked that charge from happening was by bringing in the Flaggit from the top left-hand corner of the table. And let's see where he could have gone. So he's up there somewhere. So I could have brought him down and poked his head about a centimetre around this corner. That was as far as I possibly could have got him. And then I would have edged the Bruiser that way slightly, which would have meant that there was no way, even with dragging individuals out of position, there was nothing he could have done to get through there. So it was physically possible to block the charge here against a nimble unit. You just need a lot in your favour to do it. And I wasn't committing that guy down there to do it. I didn't think that was necessary. I thought this was possibly going to be enough, so I kept him up there to throw a grenade, and that risk did not pay off because he was able to engineer the gap there and then charge through the crevice into the rear of the trolls, so they're going to die. And that's probably going to be as good as the game's ever going to get for me from this point, because he's going to be able to dance around with his flyer, and yeah, it's looking bad. So there we go. They also get charged in the front by that unit, which was an acceptable risk, but them in the rear, that's going to kill them. Down here, of course, the King on Chimera takes that rear charge, which they had to present to him, really. And now, had I known that I hadn't blocked off the charge, I could have kept these guys facing that way. And then he could have only rear charged this unit with the Fallen, and the King would have had to go into the front. So he would have been only been rear charging one unit then. But because I was putting all my eggs into that blocking off the charge basket, then I had to assume that the Fallen would be looking for another target and didn't want to present this one to them. So very, very complicated. And actually, after the tournament, I had a discussion with someone about individual shenanigans, and there were a couple of people that were saying that they feel individuals are far too useful for those kind of situations, and that they should be weaker. For example, you should just be able to roll over them. They shouldn't be able to be used to block things or to drag things into position and such. You should just be able to basically plow through an individual. If you make a charge, it shouldn't cause any blockage at all, which would simplify the game, definitely. Okay, you can see here that he's keeping those guys out of range. Of course, the trolls get smushed from both sides. So at this point, from this point on, I'm just trying to kill as many units as possible because I know I'm going to lose the scenario. It's virtually a guarantee at this point. So the only thing I can really do is try and get more kill points. So Harambe, little Paul, does eventually get into a fight with these guys here and takes some damage. I think he moved up right into their face and then got charged by them. And down here, the Bruiser is just staying out of anyone's charge arc, so he can maybe do something later, and I'm still throwing grenades around. Turn 5. The King gets into the flank of the Rabble, out of sight of the trolls, because with flyers, when you've only got big cumbersome units like this, it is a nightmare trying to cover all angles when there are other units around as well that you have to worry about. And there's this fight going on still. Centaur Chief chases after the wizard. He's surrounding the Bruiser, but the Bruiser is nimble, so he should be able to get out of danger for now. The Flaggit becomes wavered. It's probably from the Mage's Conclave. If anything's mysteriously become wavered, just assume that it's them at super long range. And the Troll Bruiser takes some damage from shooting as well. So Little Paul is dead, but he had to have a go. And the Rabble Horde is dead as a result of the King on Chimera. And the Wizard is wavered. The Trolls are just kind of sitting ducks at the moment. And that Wizard is just running away. This is where the Trolls have turned round to face the King to make sure they're not going to get rear or flank charged by it, to give themselves a slightly better chance of survival. But all he has to do is just hide, really, and he's won. Wizard backing away around that hill to try and hide a bit. The Bruiser moving in on them as fast as it can go, trying to just get some kill points. This guy was wavered. Turn 6. Mammoth charges everywhere. Big charge there, tiny charge there. Everything into the Trolls, so they're going to die. And the Bruiser, he may survive that double charge. Lots of hinderage going on. I don't think these will be hindered, though. I've got, let's see. No, Beast Pack have Pathfinder, so they'll be fine. And individual charges into the Wizard. And yeah, that's it. So most of those units do die. I think the Bruiser survived, and then in my final turn, he was able to do a point of damage to a unit or something, or maybe I may have killed the Beast Pack. So overall, the fact that he was able to get turn 1 and immediately get into close combat in turn 1, due to the Vanguard, able to get into one of my Rock Lobbers immediately, and hide from all my Rock Lobbers with the King, meant that he was able to get much further across the battlefield than I was hoping before I was able to put damage on him. I was hoping to land a rock, at least one rock, to really weaken that King, to make him hesitant about putting it into combat. But it was not to be. And I wouldn't really call the incident of getting my Trolls double charged a mistake as such, because we would have spent hours and hours working out the exact angles required for me to know precisely whether it was simple or not to block off that charge. And this guy, like I said, could have come down to help, but obviously working all that stuff out at the time takes a very long time. And we did have an hour each, but often with things like that, when you're working out whether something's possible based on angles, you don't want to be using up a lot of your dice rolling and strategy time to be doing that. And pausing the game isn't ideal, because then games run over. And none of my games really run over, but there were a lot of people whose games went too long on the day. I think because there was an hour instead of 50 minutes, that perhaps gave people the attitude that they could be a bit more laid back and pause the game whenever they felt like it. And I think that kind of bred an environment of everyone was just a little too maybe laid back with their timekeeping, I would say. So I think chopping down the time a bit would be beneficial next time if the tournament is run in exactly the same way. Otherwise, I would knock a tiny bit of time off, and also be a bit more strict with the end of game times as well, just to keep the end of the day from being too late. Because on the first day, I think it was an hour and a half late, possibly, the end of the day, which is quite significant when people need to be driving to places and such. So, on to the final game, because that one was obviously a loss. So, I only got 5 tournament points for that one as well. I only killed less than 400 points worth of enemy models, which was a little bit disappointing, but I think a lot was against me there. There was a lot of units in there that I didn't particularly like the idea of dealing with. Large dragons, for example, that I'm not going to be able to just kill with a war trombone when they land behind my lines. They are a bit of a problem for that list that I took. I don't think I have much that can combat that. If it was 2,000 points and I had a 3rd war trombone, That starts to look very dangerous for dragons landing behind the lines, but now that they've been nerfed a tiny bit, just having 1 or 2, I don't think I've got quite enough to deal with it. So that puts me at 2 big wins, 1 narrow loss, and 1 pretty big loss, going into round 5. So I think there were 32 players at this tournament, and I would have been probably just in the top half. Probably not quite top third, I would say. Or maybe just, but probably not. Probably just below, going into the last round. And round 5 was the push scenario, where your aim is to take the tokens into the opponent's half. And it was decreed by the tournament organisers that there would be 2 tokens per side instead of D3, as it says in the book. So there's also 1 in the centre that wasn't here when I took this picture, but we did put it on shortly after. So you get 1 victory point for each token you hold. You get 2 victory points for each token that is on a unit that is located entirely within the opponent's half of the table. So I'm against Salamanders here, which is an army I don't have much experience against. And let's see, do I have a copy of their list? Yes, I do, right here. So I'll be able to tell you what the units are momentarily. You can see the terrain setup, though. There are some nice view-obstructing trees in the middle, but I did put a hill in this deployment zone, and then when I think I was able to pick side, and I chose this side, which gave me a nice spot to sit all my rock lobbers on, and they were able to see through this big, juicy gap between the trees there, almost all the battlefield, because this side was a bit neglected. I was able to put the rock lobbers down last because I had more drops as well, which is something that's beneficial with having 18 or 19 drops in a Goblin army. Anything that you need to position well, you can just do last based on the opponent's setup, and rock lobbers are one of those things that you want to be doing towards the end. So, which end have we started at here? I started on my left flank with the Rabble Horde, and they have both of the tokens on the unit there. So the tokens do slow you down to speed 5, so I'm not really planning on advancing this unit too much. I'm quite happy to sit in my half and kind of sacrifice this unit taking part in the game and just to hold on to 2 tokens. And if the opportunity arises, they'll go for the other side. But they're sitting in cover as well, which will protect them from shooting. I've also got my Sniffs on this side to protect them. And moving down, there's a War Trombone that's also positioned in such a way that it can get over there to help them if need be. Mawbeasts, Trolls, Little Paul, the Mincer as backup, a War Trombone there, the Wizard. And then we've got the Spitters with another little troll block over there with the Bruiser, the Mawbeasts, the Flaggit, and the other Wizard, and the 3 Rock Lobbers. Now, they're all actually supposed to be in line with the central one there, but the way the hill was made, they were just going to slide down because they're all metal. So I just positioned them in a way that they would balance and made it very clear to my opponent that they were all supposed to be in line with that one. So there were no issues there. Onto the opponent's army. We have a unit of Lancers there. So they are pretty heavy cavalry by the looks of it. Then we've got these guys here, which are... These are Tyrants, I think. So they're obviously old Croxigore and Skink models there from the Lizardmen range. But they're representing the big height 2 large infantry creatures. And there's another unit of them further down. And there's a little shooter unit of troops there. Those are the Gekota Hunters. And they have blowpipes. So shooty attacks. And then he's got 2 of these. Let's see, what are they called? I'm going to assume that these are the Ankylodon battle platforms. One there, and another one there. So they have a shooting attack on them. You can see one of them's carrying one of his tokens as well. And then in the center there, he's got large cavalry, which are ancients on rhinosaurs. So they're going to be quite dangerous. And I'm liking this already because there's lots of height 2, 3, and 4. And I'm already on a hill with the rock lobbers, so I'm going to be able to have endless targets all day long here. And there is the other unit of Tyrants there. At the back, he's got a battle captain on Rhinosaur. which is a hero on large cavalry, and a couple of characters there, which are, I think one of them is a mage priest, and the other one, let's see, what is that? I don't know, and I can't remember which of the living legends he used at the moment. Actually, that might be the mage priest. Yeah, it's the ale chemist. So I already described him earlier in another game. So that's the ale chemist there. So the one with lots of magic spells. And on this side, he's got more of the little shooty hunters, and he's got that beast there, which I think is the Lechelidon. And that is a shooty attack from a lizard, which is never fun. So turn 1. And I think he got the choice and decided to take going first, so he wouldn't get his units shot to bits before he'd even moved anything. So the advance is on pretty much all the way across. I'm not sure where his other token is, actually. It may be on... Oh, yeah, it's on that unit there, balanced between that guy's legs. You can see the little coin-shaped thing there. These two didn't move up, but they may have moved up a tiny bit just so they could shoot. This wants to start spitting at my Rabble Horde, though, and it puts 2 damage on them, just slowly chipping away, hoping that over the course of the game maybe you can kill them and discourage them from moving forwards with the tokens. So my Mawbeasts on the right flank are just angling themselves in, because there isn't a lot of enemy units over there. And look at this, 2 rock lobbers. What do? Well, they combine their damage with that of the Spitter unit, and wow, they kill the Lancer cavalry unit in turn 1. 2 rock lobber hits, and the Spitters chipped in with some damage as well. So unit deleted in turn 1 as usual. You've got to love those rock lobbers. Turn 2. Again, an advance. Not as far this time, because he's wary of heading into charge range of all my trolls and such. So just moving up, and then he's going to be able to start pelting me with firepower from these little units. And there's also ranged weaponry on these 2 battle platforms as well. You can see a nice wide shot of the battlefield. His first couple of turns were very, 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 very fast, because it was mainly just push things forward, a couple of shots, and that's it. Most of my early turns were the same, actually. As you can see, it's turning into a little bit of a standoff here. Bit of encirclement going on, because he's lost the cavalry. He doesn't have anything else on that flank now. So I'm able to kind of swing around there a bit and maybe get in on him, unless he falls back, perhaps. So moving up the war trombone, keeping everything behind the woods so he can't charge me through them, because he does have some fast units there. For example, the battle platforms, their speed's 6, but the ancients on rhinosaurs are the speed that I'm worried about now, because the other cavalry are dead. Their speed's 7, these large cavalry here. So I don't want to go into the woods and get charged by anything, just hiding behind it, waiting for him to come to me. Because I say, I've killed 1 unit, it's advantage me, and I think he's going to come forward so he doesn't get rocked to death for the whole game. A grenade is being lobbed because this guy's got into the flank. He's going to be a nuisance for him. 2 damage. Rock lobber and the Spitters. They put 7 damage onto this large cavalry unit, but can't quite remove them. Then the Sniffs put damage and waver the shooty lizard up there. Turn 3. So again, not a huge advance, repositioning, and he's put certain units in range to charge, but not all of them. And he's also dipped his toe into the woods with the tyrants. So I'm going to have to do something about them, otherwise they're going to have their pick of what to charge next turn. And he has a lot of healing ability, actually, because both these guys have heal 6, I think. Let's see. Because the Mage Priest has heal 3 and Shroud of the Saint, which boosts his heal. And he also had the Ale Chemist, who has heal as well. So he was able to get most of the wounds back on that unit. And these guys, the Hunters, they shoot along with the battle platform and that one. They all combine to do 4 damage to this unit of trolls, which I'm not concerned about at all because it's not much and they've got regen. Then, in my turn, Rock Lobber and the Spitters and a lightning bolt. Kaboom, something's dead. And it's the Ancients on Rhinosaur's large cavalry. So his 2 fastest units killed by rock lobbers and spitters. The spitters actually did a ton of damage in this game. They rolled obscenely well compared to their previous shooty performances. And here the Troll Bruiser ran out on his own because he's not worried about being flank charged, because whatever charges him is going to leave itself in range to be charged by all my other units. So he's really sacrificing himself there if the enemy want to take the bait. I think he does a tiny bit of damage to that unit. And the War Trombone moves right up an inch away from the unit of Tyrants and then flames them at point blank range. Does a little bit of damage, but really it just wants to block them from charging anything else. And when they then charge the Trombone, they'll be ripe for the plucking and chargeable by something else. Over here, my Sniffs decided to charge into his Hunters and actually wavered them by doing 4 damage. So Sniffs, they're a nice all-round unit with their shooting ability and their ability to make 20-inch charges as well. I'm starting to do better with them. So you can see how it's looking. It's not looking good for the Salamanders at all. They've lost their two of their hardest hitting units, definitely. The Tyrants and the Battle Platforms are still a threat, and he's still got his hero on a big beastie there, but I haven't really lost anything of note yet, I don't think. So as you can see, it's looking a bit like a pincer movement going on here. Not looking too healthy for him. Turn 4. So obviously the Tyrants charge at the Trombone. That's all they really can do in that situation. They weren't able to angle past it and charge anything else because of these particular angles involved. And over here, he doesn't actually take that bait. He just repositions and waits for me. So he's going to continue to get pelted with firepower. He doesn't even charge the Troll Bruiser. He doesn't countercharge it. He just, because they're nimble, the Hunters, I think he goes backwards a little bit and pivots. And here, it looks like his wizards did some healing wizardry on that unit there. And then the Spitty Lizard did nothing. I took a picture of it prior to him rolling for damage, and then he just failed with all the rolls, I think. In the chat, Juan Hidalgo says, that Salamander list is dreadful. So much wasted points on overpriced units and no fast-hitting characters. Well, if my opponent is watching this video, I'm sure he will take your advice on board. You can see, of course, that the War Trombone gets killed and then they move back out of the woods again. That'll prevent them being charged by my units that are behind the woods. And here, I actually land a grenade on my turn and kill the Mage Priest in 1 grenade hit. So that is quite lucky. And here, the Troll Bruiser on his own. This unit of Tyrants were backing away with their token because they didn't want to be charged by my Trolls. So I've moved the Trolls and the Mawbeasts up behind the Troll Bruiser who is charged into them. So they're not going to escape for another turn because they'll either have to countercharge the Bruiser or they'll get charged again. And if they countercharge him, they'll be definitely left within charge range of my other units. And here, you can see that his battle platform put some damage onto these Trolls. And what does my little shooting battery do here? Puts some more damage, or puts the start of some damage onto that battle platform. Oh, and look at this. The Sniffs do 1 more damage to the Hunters, 5 damage, but roll a double 1. So that's nice. Obviously, it didn't need to be a double 1 to fail to kill them with that little damage on them, but it's always funny just to see the double 1 come up. They may actually have done more damage than that. I can't remember. Maybe it hadn't been marked. No, I think it's just 5. So it's still looking pretty good for me. I'm racking up damage on things, and one of the healers is dead now. You can see here that there's going to be a big crunch going on there, and it's looking really bad for the Salamanders. In terms of scenario, though, it's still even. We're still holding the same number of objectives, and the one in the center is untouched. Turn 5. So a double battle platform charge onto these trolls, because they had gone in and they had actually killed, or they'd killed something, I think, or maybe they just charged that thing. And let's see here. Okay, perhaps I charged him and didn't do anything. I think that's probably what happened. And then I didn't realize that that was going to leave me in the flank of this bad boy here. So I'm going to get a double charge for that. These guys pick up a token, I think. I think someone else may have dropped it. Yes, it was the battle platform here that dropped the token, and then those guys picked it up later. And then the rest of his units, bit of repositioning going on here on the left flank, because these guys are the only threat to my double token carrying Rabble Horde over in the corner. Oh, and look at this. It's a double one, but it's in the enemy turn this time. So the Tyrants on the Bruiser, getting him up to 9 damage, and then roll a double one. So they don't even manage to waver him. And I can't remember what the re-rolls were used for in this game. Then the Ale Chemist manages to waver the Flaggit. And of course the trolls get mushed from both sides by those battle platforms, which gives him a little bit of breathing room there. Down here, I'm repositioning my units. Trolls have moved up into the woods, and the Mincer is come up into the action. Little Paul is there as well. And this was a triple charge onto the Tyrants there. The Trolls and the Mawbeast that I moved up behind the Bruiser, who had suffered, or well, not really suffered, benefited from that double one. Those 3 units all charged into the Tyrants, squashed to death, all dead. Even though there's lots of hindrances going on, still toasted. And the Bruiser then took the token off them, and he's hiding behind my other trolls now. The Sniffs finally managed to kill off that unit of hunters. So it's looking very, very bad for the Salamanders. They've killed a unit of trolls, but they've lost a lot. The tokens are in the possession, 2 of them in the Rabble unit there. My Bruiser's got one. He's got one on these Tyrants, and there's one unclaimed on the ground, with Little Paul and the battle platform standing right next to it. Turn 6, and you can see the dead pile there, backed up by a nice bottle of Coca-Cola. Okay, so you can see he had his arc of visibility there, which was to determine whether these trolls would be able to charge into this sucker. And we determined that they wouldn't be able to. And at this point, I think this is the point in the game where he realized that you score points for having tokens in your own half. He was thinking all along that you only get points if you take them into the enemy half, or he just forgot partway through the game or something. So I'm not sure what that would have changed in his approach, but presumably he would have committed a bit more to go after this Rabble because he knows they're sitting on points. He was thinking they weren't going to score anything as long as he didn't let them get into his half. But I'm not sure it would have made a massive difference on the overall game, because I think just the way the battle was going rather than the scenario, I think eventually they would have got chewed through. Perhaps he would have committed more stuff on this flank and I would have had to come over further with it. Who knows? And he wasn't able to pick up that token because he wasn't able to end his move on it with the battle platform. And that's because Little Paul was there and he couldn't end up within an inch of him. So I think that's correct. But either way, that thing's probably going to die soon anyway. His, what's this guy called again? Battle Captain, there we go. On Rhinosaur, charges into the Sniffs, only does 3 damage though. And, oh, picture Rock Lobbers again. This isn't going to be good. Kaboom. That is a dead battle platform. So which one was it? That one just got rock lobbed to death. And I believe the Trolls and the Mincer charge into this unit here. And as you can see, they killed it. I think that may have actually been a triple charge. No, that's not possible, is it? Is it? Let's see. Oh, yes, it was a triple charge because the Mincer was in the flank. That's right. So the Mincer had the flank and the front. Because they were in the woods, the Mawbeasts could see them. So Mawbeasts and Trolls in the front, Mincer in the flank. Squashed unit. And who took the token off them? It was the Trolls here. So I'm now holding a lot of tokens. And Little Paul's picked up the central one. And the enemy only has a couple of units left, I think, now. So we do get a turn 7. So he manages to finish off the Sniffs with his battle captain. And then in my last turn, I double charge him with the Mincer and the Mawbeasts, but they didn't manage to kill him. They do some damage, but we didn't bother marking it because it was the end of the game, and they didn't manage to finish him off. So that's the end of that game. So we only had 2 models left. I had all the tokens, so obviously it's a win. And in terms of size of the win, let me look at my sheet here. I scored 1,890 kill points, which was enough to get maximum points, so that's another 20 out of 20. So overall, in the tournament, all 5 games, 3 very, very large, convincing wins, 1 extremely close loss, and 1 large loss. So I would say that's a pretty solid performance, considering I haven't been to a tournament in quite a few months. And as far as my list goes, actually, I'll tell you where I finished first. So the way this tournament was scored, there was quite a lot of emphasis put on hobby and sportsmanship scoring. So some people who finished quite high up in just purely battle points ended up being bumped down quite a few places, or some people bumped up quite a few places because of the soft scores, as they call them. So I think purely on battle points, I finished about 8th out of 32. But when you factor in painting and sportsmanship and anything else that they may have factored in, I believe I finished 11th out of 32, which I think is pretty solid indeed. A third of the way down. I'll take that. My aim was to try and get a couple of wins at least, and 3 is quite satisfying. Of course, there were things I could have done different in the games that I lost. My choices, particularly in the second round game, I'd say that contributed more to my loss than my choices did in game 4, where I think I was kind of up against it from the start. But I think game 2, with the good start I had, was definitely winnable, but there were a couple of mistakes in there. But obviously pleased with the 3 juicy wins. So the list. I think I need something else, because when it comes to dealing with volley guns, I tend to struggle. Whether I should have just immediately fired rock lobbers at them is one possibility. Obviously, you have to do a little bit of damage there, because you can't just wound those things and expect them not to fire back. You have to actually waver them if you're not hitting them in combat. So another option would be something like a bigot that's running around on its own and charging into those little annoying long-range war machines. But of course, they can be picked off, and they're not that cheap, really, in points. What could I take out? The Troll Bruiser. People don't tend to take them very often. So I'm not sure whether I overrate them a bit, but I do think they are tasty. They're not that obscenely expensive for what they can bring. And when I'm not bringing much else that's inspiring, and I have 3 units of trolls, he does have a purpose, definitely. The amount of hordes I've got, I think, is fine for scoring in scenarios. The war trombones and the rock lobbers I like. When it comes to a 2,000 point tournament sometime in the future, I will actually be able to take 4 rock lobbers now, because one of them's a special character. So it's not the same thing 4 times. It's just 3 regulars and 1 special rock lobber. So I don't know whether people would enjoy coming up against that, but I think it would be fun. It's the drama of rolling all those dice and then looking out for the 5 pluses, because I think the reason some people don't like them is because it hits on a 5 plus. You feel like, on average, they're going to miss. So when it hits you, you feel like something, the universe is against you, maybe. Because you think, oh, it's 5 plus, it should miss me. But when you're throwing that many of them and firing that many times, most of the time they are going to score some hits. And when they do hit, they do as you saw in this tournament, rip things to pieces. Even in one of the games that I lost, they did some mass damage. So I'll whiz back through the images here. If anyone has any other comments or questions on the live chat, get them in now, because we're going to wrap this up very shortly. I think we've been going for about 2 hours 15, something around there. There were lots of awards and prizes at this tournament as well. I think there were about 10 different, they weren't exactly trophies, they were kind of engraved glass, little nice items, and there was one big trophy. And I agreed with the award for best painted. I think there was a very nice army, and you can probably find out which one that was and see pictures of it around on Facebook. And the Living Legends, they had a separate competition for the best painted one of those as well, and that was quite a high standard. And I did actually win a prize, but not because of anything I actually did. They just had 3 leftover prizes at the end. So I was drawn randomly, and one of the remaining prizes was a £20 Mantic voucher. So I grabbed that, and I've actually already spent that. I put that towards a ticket for Clash of Kings 2018, which I'll be able to attend for the first time because it's taking place about 20 minutes from my house this time, rather than in a totally different part of the country where I would have to stay in a hotel or something. So I'm looking forward to that. And anything else? So the way it was organized, I thought overall it was good. I like the way the scenarios were revealed just before the game. I think I prefer that, so people can't plan for it quite as much. I think the Living Legend characters added quite a bit to the list building. You had to factor it in, really, because I didn't take too many inspiring characters because I had a very inspiring hero. And also, just any unit that you don't generally see mixes things up a bit. When people aren't intimately familiar with something and they've not faced it 1,000 times before, it does add another variable into the mix, which is what I like. If I didn't like variables, then I would stick to something like chess, where the best player 99.99999% of the time is going to win. Whereas in a dice game, and a game where you have a variety of units taken in different combination that you're seeing each time, obviously the best players do win more often than not, but you do see some shocking results. And the top players don't always make up the top few positions in the table. Anything else? Oh, there's a comment here from Paulos01. A good finish position considering you've had no tournament action for a few months. Yes, I think I've only played 1 game of Kings of War in the last 6 months prior to this tournament. So considering that, I don't think there was too much rust on display. And whether I'll take the Goblins to the next tournament is up for debate at the moment, because I do want to go to a tournament with 4 rock lobbers just to see the look on people's faces. But then again, I also haven't taken undead to a tournament for a very long time, so I'd like to take them again at some point. I've also got my Stormcast Eternal Ogres, which I can take to another tournament. I've only taken them to 1 so far. And they've actually been given a bit of a boost by the new Clash of Kings book, because Chariot Hordes have been upgraded with speed and nerve. And the fact that I'm limited in which models I can take for that army means that a Chariot Horde is something I do pretty much have to take. And I would want to anyway, because I think the big Star Drake model is so nice and looks great as a Chariot Horde. So I would want to take it even if it was terrible, but I think that would help me to be more competitive with Ogres. And it's actually inspiring me to buy some more models for that army, purely so I can use them as Ogres in Kings of War. It's inspired me to perhaps get some Gryph-hounds, which I can use as kind of chaff cavalry for an Ogre army. So that'll be interesting, because I've already got 1 of those, and if I got a box of 5, I could then put out 2 units of those. Just need to get the multi-bases magnetized for them, and that's definitely doable. Also, I'm in the midst of painting this undead halfling army. There's one complete unit. And how many units have I got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on my table right in front of me. And I'm working on them. I've just done the bases. So the actual painting process on them doesn't take long at all. It's just I've been obviously busy with this tournament and other things the last few days. So I haven't got further on them yet. I'm thinking of painting the bone colour on them tonight, possibly. So over the next few days, I'll be hoping to get them finished within a week, with any luck. And then, I'm not sure how many points I'll have then. If I'm using them as Rordia, I believe that means I'll have less points than if I was using them as undead, because there's some elite-looking infantry that if I was using them as undead, I could use them as Soul Reaver cavalry, or Soul Reaver infantry, should I say. And of course, the cavalry could be Soul Reaver cavalry. But I do already have an undead army, so I would rather use them as Rordia more often than not. So I'll have to work out exactly how many points I've got, and then look into buying some more as well. Because I did recently sell some of my Caradron Overlords, the ones that I was never going to get round to painting, and I've got more of those I can sell also, if I want to raise some funds and buy some of these undead halflings, because the ones I've got were sent to me for nothing, for promotional purposes. So I feel like I could buy some of the spearmen, perhaps, and that would be pretty tasty for the army. Because they are a fun army to paint the way I'm doing them. It's very simple with quick shade and then putting more time into the basing than the actual models themselves. So I should be able to whip up an army pretty quick for them. So I would like to take them to a tournament one day. And another thing I'm pondering as well is possibly getting an Abyssal army at some point. So I've ordered a single Efreet on its own, just so I can paint it and try out a colour scheme and see if eventually I would like to get an army of those. Because obviously, if I'm painting one model and I don't like it, then I'm not going to want to do a full army. But I'm thinking of doing some really unusual colour scheme, maybe pink, something like that. Because obviously, I've already got this orange Goblin army, so I don't need another orange Kings of War army. But I think pink Abyssals would actually be quite funny if they were kind of pink and sparkly looking when they're supposed to be so evil. I think that would be an interesting contrast to what you usually see. I'll have to do a bit of research and see if anyone else has done an amusing looking Abyssal army before. Almost through this tournament now. We're on game 2 at the moment. I'll speed things up a bit. Anyone else with any comments or questions? Paulos says, ooh, Abyssal's nice. Well, I wouldn't hold your breath, though, because it could be a fair old while before I get round to that. Oh, I think you just saw a shot at the end of my beautiful orange shoe there. There you go. That's a bit of excitement for you to brighten up your day. If you've made it this far into this tournament report, you're obviously a Kings of War tactics buff, and you want to track one of the clearly top Kings of War players in the world. Maybe one day I'll win a tournament and that claim can actually be backed up. I suppose I could have claimed to be one of the top Relics players in the world since I did win a tournament for that game system, but version 2 hasn't been released for that yet. So Kings of War, though the best I've ever done, is second in a tournament, and that was sometime last year. I've had a couple of other good results as well, some middling results, 1 or 2 really bad results. One of those was with Ogres, though, the first time I'd ever used them, so I'm not concerned about that one. I do have a Dwarf army as well that I could use, but I don't have anything that would be considered a competitive choice, really, because it's just my old Warhammer Fantasy Dwarf army, so there's no cavalry in it, for instance. And we're almost back to the start of the images here, at which point the video will cease. So if anyone has any more questions, you can drop them in the permanent comments, and I will endeavour to get around to answering all of those later, which you'll be able to read after the fact by scrolling down. If you are going to comment on this video, by the way, afterwards, it would be preferable if you don't spoil the results of all the games in there. Or if you're going to, at least put this comment contains spoilers in all caps first or something, just so someone doesn't check out the first comment before watching the video and then the results spoiled for them in case they like the excitement of delving into the unknown. So, one of the organisers, Mr. Jonathan here, says there were 7 glass trophies, 1 huge goblet trophy, and then we had some spot prizes. Yes, it was heavily stocked in the prize department, it's safe to say. one of the most impressive prize hauls I've seen at a tournament before, and the trophy was very nice. Anything else before I go? I don't think so. I can now dispose of all these documents and army lists instead of holding them in my hand like I've been doing for the last near 2.5 hours. Anything else I want to update you on? If you're at all interested in the world of Age of Sigmar, then there will be an Andy and Rem show this week, hopefully, because there have been some more developments in that universe in the last couple of weeks that we're going to update the people on and give our thoughts on. Some new Dark Elf developments. I also received another promotional parcel the other day from the creator of the Undead Halfling, who sent me some Undead Orcs. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with those yet, actually. I could just integrate them into my regular Undead army, and I could perhaps use them as... Some of them are on foot, some of them are on beasts, so I could possibly use them as Soul Reaver infantry, some of the nice armoured-looking ones. They're a bit skeletal to be vampires, perhaps, though. I'll have to have a look through the list and determine that at a later date, but I'm sure they'll get used for something. But first and foremost, I'm going to finish this undead halfling army, which I will then be able to use as Rordia. And I was actually thinking of a really interesting thing I could do for a battle report, actually. Let me know if you're interested in this. It would be starting the game using them as Rordia, and then there would be a random dice roll at the end of each turn to see if they become undead at some point. So they would definitely become undead by the end, but it wouldn't be necessarily until halfway through the game. And I would have to work out what the equivalent of each unit would be. I think that would be a really interesting game. So let me know if you'd be interested in something like that as a viewer. And just let me know what else you want to see as well, because I've finished decorating this corner of the room that I was working on. I've finished moving furniture around in here. I've got a nice display cabinet up for some of my big miniatures, and I can now get back into creating more video content, hopefully. Live shows, I can probably start cranking out more of those. I'm not sure about Orange Friday. It depends what I've got to talk about on a specific week, but I'm sure I can start thinking about that again. And I'm also thinking of doing a game of Age of Sigmar at Warhammer World at some point soon with Mr. Remington and possibly other people. We shall see. So I think the next tournament I've got lined up, I'm not sure if I'm going 100% yet, but there's a Dead Zone tournament at the same place this tournament was held, I think, and I believe that is in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. So I'll check on that, but I think I'm available for that. So I should be able to attend there, so you can look forward to a report from that. And, oh, we've got some more people popped in the chat who are a bit late. Andrew Gilbert says, what war machine models will you use for Halfling Undead Rordia? Well, I don't know. I'm going to be scouring the internet. I'm going to be looking through, for example, the Reaper website and looking for some kind of big undead creatures that I can use for some of the units in the army. Something I could mount undead halflings on would be interesting. I do think the guy that's doing the undead halflings is going to make some undead halfling war machine crew, but not actual war machines, so I'll have to find something to fill in for those. Brendan Duffy says, hello all. Well, you're a little bit late for this, but I'm sure you can go back to the beginning and enjoy it just as much as if you were here live, except without the thrill of having your comments read out live on the air by an A-list celebrity. Raphael Marge is here as well, said, I would totally dig Undead Orcs. Yeah, so I'm going to do some videos on the Undead Orcs as well at some point, because he's going to be putting them on Kickstarter over the next few weeks. So hopefully I'll get round to assembling those by the time the Kickstarter rolls around, but I've got to finish all this stuff first. So I think that's enough end of tournament waffle. I will put up some pictures of them, yes, at some point. So I think it's time to say good night out there, whoever you are, and keep supporting Kings of War as a game system, keep attending tournaments. Tournaments for any game, really, but particularly those that are smaller than, for example, 40k. Keep the tournament scenes rolling. And ta-ta for now, everybody.